Welcome back. The pipe bombs mailed to critics of President Trump and a shooting at a Pittsburgh synagogue happened within days of each other, and both of the suspects in those cases appeared in court today. Cesar Sayoc faces 5 charges for mailing at least 14 explosive devices to CNN and top Democrats and security officials. And officials tell NBC News that Sayoc had a long list of potential targets, possibly even over 100 people. Sayoc made his court appearance as yet another suspicious package was sent to CNN's facility in Atlanta and intercepted at a local post office. Meanwhile, the U.S. attorney based in Pittsburgh has started the process to seek the death penalty for the man accused of killing 11 worshipers at a synagogue on Saturday. That's because the charges against the suspect, Robert Bowers, include a hate crime for obstructing free expression of religion. I'm joined now by NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams, who has been following both of these stories. Pete, let's start with Cesar Sayoc. Over 100 people on his quote-unquote research list. What are authorities doing right now to make sure those people are aware of any packages that could potentially be coming to them?
Telling them. Yeah. They've got teams of people going to basically door to door to talk to these folks. There's a couple of reasons for it. One is the FBI has long recognized what it calls a duty to warn. So you may remember a couple of years ago when ISIS put out a list of U.S. military members who they said ought to be targeted. The FBI tried to get to all those folks and warn them. There's a more practical thing here as well. The Postal Service now says, given the fact that Cesar Sayoc was arrested on Friday, they believe that any packages he sent, if indeed he did send any, on Thursday would be through the system by tomorrow. So they can't guarantee that they know all of them, that there might still be some out there. So for that reason, they want to tell people this as well. So it's been a busy day for 2-person teams from the FBI, from Joint Terrorism Task Forces in many cities here in Washington and New York, most heavily, from what we understand, telling these people, hey, you know, Cesar Sayoc was looking up your information.
What happened with him in court today?
Very brief hearing today for both him and for Robert Bowers, the man accused of shooting people at the synagogue in Pittsburgh on Saturday. These are very brief appearances. They're known as initial appearances. And all they do basically is say, these are the charges against you. The way these things work in the federal system, it's the chance for the lawyers to say, hey, you got the wrong guy. That didn't happen in either case. They're going to be held without bond until subsequent hearings, and it was very short for Sayoc. He was brought into court shackled and with handcuffs, which is pretty standard in these violent crime cases, and he basically had a lawyer appointed for him, and the same thing really for Bowers in Pittsburgh.
Any pleading going on yet?
No, there are never any pleadings at these initial stages. These are just initial appearances. All they are is to say, hey, these are the charges against you. Shall you be held in bail? The pleadings come when people are arraigned after they're indicted. Then they plead guilty or not guilty. But that doesn't happen at this stage.
In Pittsburgh with Robert Bowers, what is the process for potentially pursuing the death penalty?
Well, so the way it works in the federal system, it's changed over the years. Back during the Clinton administration, when Janet Reno was Attorney General, there was a concern that the death penalty was being used excessively against African Americans. And to try to prevent that, make sure the death penalty was being handled fairly, the Justice Department set up this review process. So any U.S. attorney who wants to recommend a death penalty be pursued in a case has to make a recommendation to the Justice Department where it's reviewed. Now, normally that process is confidential. We never know what the U.S. attorney has recommended, but exceptions can be granted by the Attorney General, and that's apparently what's happened here. So now we know that the U.S. attorney there, Scott Brady, plans to recommend that the government seek the death penalty. It's a death-eligible crime, this hate crime of interfering with someone's federally protected right to worship. And which is what he's charged with.
I was talking to Tom Winter a little bit earlier on my show before I talked to you, and he was talking about how Robert Bowers was pretty clear in his motivation for why he shot up the synagogue, and that he was, even during the negotiation process with authorities and the shootout, saying anti-Semitic things. Was that brought up in court at all today? Anything else having to do with that?
No, these appearances, they don't really go through the evidence. But, you know, there are many reasons why the government is charging a hate crime. Number one, the mere fact that he singled out a synagogue. Number two, the social media posts that he had that were rife with anti-Semitic comments. And law enforcement people are well aware of that. But thirdly, it's more than what you just said. According to law enforcement and witnesses, he said, "I want to kill Jews," while he was shooting, as he was in the gunfire with the police, while he was being treated in the ambulance and brought to the hospital, and while he was being treated by doctors. And the hospital today said the people who were treating him were Jewish doctors, and he's saying, "I want to kill Jews."
He made it abundantly clear. I guess that's the long and short of it. Pete Williams. Pete, thank you so much.
You bet.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.